Hello and welcome. This is the final video in a four-part series of videos on criticisms of and opposition to the neurodiversity movement. The image here is the abyss of an iceberg, signifying that we are at the bottom of our deep dive. Today, I am talking about how opposition to the neurodiversity movement sometimes aligns itself with the far right. I have already talked about what criticisms people often have of it, both from proponents and opponents. Then I discussed the history of its most vocal critics. After that, I went over false autism causation theories, namely the disproven vaccine autism link and the anti vaxxer movement. So now I am finishing this series by talking about the far right. All of these are dimensions of thought that opponents and critics of the neurodiversity movement often hold. You can watch this video without having seen the previous three, though it will be helpful. I want to give a special thanks to Autism Against Fascism, which has been monitoring autistic fascists and fascism in autistic spaces for several years now. A lot of their work was helpful in framing what I am discussing today. This video comes with a very obvious content warning since I am talking about literal fascists. Anything from blatant racism, misogyny, anti queerness, ableism, anti Semitism, and xenophobia, among other forms of bigotry, is subject for discussion here. Viewer discretion is advised. So, what is fascism? Fascism is an umbrella term for a number of political ideologies. Fascists are people who hate entire groups of people and advocate for their extinction. It is an ideology that took off in the mid 20th century, especially during World War II. It is what led to the Holocaust, where millions of people deemed inferior were killed, namely for being Jewish. Many fascists deny that this even happened, and think it's part of a Jewish conspiracy. Fascism still exists in today's world. Fascists are at the far right end of the political spectrum. The right wing encompasses conservative beliefs of many kinds, not all of which are as extreme as fascism. The right wing of politics typically believes in either preserving the current societal rules we have or making changes that are more reminiscent of older societal norms. Many people who hold these beliefs call themselves conservatives. Some conservatives are fascists, most are not. In the United States, the Republican Party is largely conservative in the beliefs of its members and voter base. Some Republican politicians, especially in the past few years, have increasingly been catering more to the far right. The other major party in the United States is the Democratic Party. Their beliefs are not necessarily left wing, but are more progressively inclined compared to the Republican Party. Other countries have different party systems, and conservative and liberal hold different meanings. The left and right wings of politics apply to people in all nations. While fascism is an umbrella term for the far right itself has many sub movements within it. They are all fascists, they just have different goals and a range of different beliefs. All of them are harmful and dangerous. Some of these sub movements include the alt right, white nationalists, neo Nazis, incels, and groypers. I personally wouldn't really bat an eye if someone called a white nationalist a neo Nazi since they're really not that far off. They have varying degrees of racist and white supremacist views. I will leave resources in the description below for more reading on specific right wing subcultures. You could say these are all people in severe need of grass touching, but it's going to take more than grass to stop them. Nobody becomes radicalized overnight. There are several ways in which fascists recruit people. They use subtle tactics to ease people into their spaces as they inject harmful ideas into their heads. They may also call this red pilling, as a reference to the red pill from the Matrix, which is a blatant misappropriation of what the red pill means, but I digress. These people often hang around in fandom spaces, which is where impressionable people they deem normies start. They may use video games like Call of Duty where you can voice chat with strangers while playing them online as a place to recruit people. You very well may have encountered right-wing memes in the wild from simply using social media. 4chan, which is pictured here, is a huge part of this. 4chan was not made with the intention of being a hotbed for right wing organization and radicalization, but because it's a message board where everyone posts anonymously, that makes it much easier for people to write whatever they want to say with little repercussion. There is some level of moderation on their site, but it's mainly on whether content posted to the boards is relevant to the topic or not. There's no actual moderation when it comes to what language is used, so every offensive slur imaginable is not only fair game, but is actively commonplace in many boards on 4chan. Not all 4chan boards necessarily have these people on them. 4chan is a huge website that has been around for 20 years now. The boards you are most common to find fascists are slash B, their random board, and slash poll, also known as politically incorrect. These people use memes that have subtle yet present bigotry in them. They desensitize users to this type of content by posting it over and over again in different formats, and by continuing to use offensive language with no repercussion. Saying something like the N word starts to feel a lot less shocking the more you see people use it casually. 4chan is far from the only platform this happens on. It also occurs in Facebook groups, Discord servers, subreddits, and Twitter, to name a few examples. The social media algorithm also plays a role in feeding this content to users. This is especially true on YouTube, where you may watch one video of a feminist being owned, or a video from PragerU, and before you know it, you've gone down a right wing rabbit hole. This was especially common during the mid 2010s and during the 2016 presidential election. People who spread these ideas went on tour, visiting many college campuses to give talks in the name of free speech. These people started to lose traction after a while, and particularly after the violent Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia in the summer of 2017. You also started to see more content that would counter this rabbit hole, even using the right dogs, whistles, and buzzwords against them. Radicalization still happens regardless, and the existence of the internet and social media make this easier to do. I highly recommend watching Innuendo Studios on YouTube, who does an excellent job of breaking down and explaining the logic behind the tactics right wingers often use, including analyses of their rhetoric. Okay, so now it's time to actually talk about disability here. The far right does not like disabled people, including people who are autistic. This does not stop people with disabilities from participating in right wing movements and spaces. However, what it does mean is that when an openly disabled person does join a right wing movement, they are seen as a useless eater, and it's usually discouraged to be open about your disability in these spaces. The right has adopted a term, weaponized autism, to describe how they will use autistic people to do dirty work for them. It could be aggressively researching things, for example. Autistic people, in fact, are more vulnerable to joining right wing movements. Many autistics and cousins are more likely to be gullible. I don't mean this as an insult, I mean it as a matter of fact. I personally have been known to fall for obvious traps myself. I almost got red pilled because of the rabbit hole I mentioned a while back. Thankfully, I had people in my life who were able to reason with me and pull me back in before it was too late. I don't think it was ever going to happen, especially since I care too much about other people, but I got scarily close. I was still in high school, and I think a lot of people at that age are naturally more prone to this, especially if they're neurodivergent at that age as they learn about politics. So, to review, the vocal opposition to the neurodiversity movement, namely the current proponents of profound autism as a new subcategory for autistic people, holds several views that make them ripe for collaboration with other types of reactionaries. They think some people are too disabled for self advocacy. So does the right, who thinks these people are inherently inferior and need to be removed from society. They are anti self diagnosis. The right often is, specifically for racist, misogynist, and anti LGBT reasons. Many opponents of the neurodiversity movement aren't anti vaccine. The anti vaxxer movement has plenty of overlap with right wing reactionaries and even more moderate conservatives. Many right wingers see vaccines as a Jewish conspiracy. If someone opposes the neurodiversity movement and or the greater disability rights movement, it's likely they also oppose other progressive movements for similar reasons, be it movements such as gay and trans liberation, racial justice, feminists, and fat liberation. They often brand these people as social justice warriors, or SJWs for short, for their perceived militancy. Anti Semitic conspiracies, in particular, have run rampant within opposition to the neurodiversity movement. Funnily enough, some of the people who have leveraged these are Jewish themselves. Several autistic self advocates have received grants from George Soros' Open Society Foundation, which is a hotbed of anti Semitic conspiracy theories in and of itself. People have used this as a suggestion that the neurodiversity movement is a conspiracy funded by George Soros. Soros himself is a Holocaust survivor. The Holocaust happened in part due to the idea that Jewish people controlled everything and were therefore the root cause of all problems in society. This idea dates back many centuries. Many vocal proponents of neurodiversity are Jewish. This has been used to push anti Semitic conspiracy theories. I think there's a good reason as to why many prominent advocates for neurodiversity are Jewish. It's something I would like to write more about as someone who is Jewish. There are teachings in Judaism that are centered around justice and fighting for a better world. And I think many of the Jewish advocates and activists in the autistic self advocacy community have had these principles in mind with the work they've done. However, that is not the same thing as saying it's a conspiracy to, I don't know, make the population less smart. If fighting for a world where everyone is treated fairly regardless of neurotype is a conspiracy, then I don't think it's a bad one. Here's an example of a meme that is both anti neurodiversity and has right wing underpinnings to it. There's also definitely an air of transphobia, too. It implies that everyone with a professional childhood diagnosis are normal people who don't make a big deal out of their disability, and perhaps have pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. And that people like Xylee on the right are all self diagnosed special snowflakes. I've talked about how there have been accusations of TikTok being used for people to self diagnose with cognitive disabilities and ruin things for people with an actual diagnosis, and Xylee is definitely an archetype of this. Whether the person who made this is aligned with the far right isn't particularly relevant. What matters is that it's this exact line of thinking that can at least be a gateway into even more reactionary views. I know plenty of Xylees who are professionally diagnosed. There's also the implication here that nobody diagnosed in childhood is a neurodiversity and disability rights activist, which couldn't be further from the truth. All three of Autism Network International's founders were diagnosed autistic as children and were in fact considered low functioning. Many activists within the movement have specifically talked about their experience in growing up autistic with a diagnosis and how that affected the way they were treated by their peers and the adults around them. Many of them are in fact LGBT and look like Xylee. This meme is an obvious bad faith attempt at painting neurodiversity activists as fakers, as well as openly LGBT folks to an extent. A certain website was started with the intention of stalking and harassing autistics and cousins and or LGBT internet users who are deemed lol cows. I am not going to name drop it here, but the picture is a hint as to what I'm referring to. Thankfully, the website's host has dropped them, making them all but dead now. However, they have caused irreparable damage to many people and have even driven some to suicide, which they wear as a badge of honor. They attempted to do this with neurodiversity activists, who I will not name to protect their privacy, though if doxing and exposing the people they went after was their intention, they failed miserably at it. Many of the people who frequented this site are legit fascists and are themselves autistic and or LGBT, but see themselves as not like those other people. The site started as a way of stalking and harassing Chris Chan, a well known internet personality. And as terrible as a person as she is, these people only made things worse than they needed to be. I am so grateful that this site is now all but dead in the water. This may be one of the most vile places to ever exist on the internet. So, this concludes the video. Thank you for watching. I will provide further reading and resources on fascism from an anti fascist perspective. Fascism is very serious business and something we need to fight whenever possible. There are many ways to do this, and it doesn't have to involve public demonstrations like the group pictured here, Anti Fascist Action, or Antifa for short, does. I am not sure what my next video lesson will be, if I end up making more, but do expect to see some updated versions of the older video lessons, particularly the introduction to the Neurodiversity Movement. Until then, farewell.